Blessed good morning, honorable members, and those under the sound of my voice. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. In our Moments of Impact devotional segment, today I'll be sharing a message entitled, Be Careful Who You Trust. One of the biggest mistakes you can ever make in life is trusting the wrong people. I've come to discover that people are very fickle and can change on you in the blink of an eye. In addition to being fickle, many people are very selfish, disingenuous, pretentious, two-faced, vile, and some people are flat out wicked. There are some who will smile with you in 1 minute, and the next minute they are ready to destroy you. Oh, how I've learned this lesson so many times in my life. Some people are good at masking who they are until there is a level of friction in the relationship. As long as things are good, you rarely get to know and see who they are. But as soon as something happens that doesn't favor them, their true colors will show. I recall a brief story in the book of 1 Samuel chapter 30 when David and his men had just returned from war. The Bible says they came to Ziklag. When they got to the city was burned with fire. Their wives, their sons, their daughters were taken. David and all the people that were with him lifted up their voice and they wept until they had no more power to weep. David's wives and everyone was taken captive. The Bible says in verse 6 that David was greatly distressed. He was stressed right out. Watch this. For the people spake of stoning him, because the souls of all the people was grieved, every man for his son and for his daughters. But David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. It's important to note that these men who sought to stone David, in just a few days prior to returning home, they was to war with him. They were a part of his team. They were in his camp. They ate from his pot. They drank from the same cistern. They were his confidants. Now the same people who was with him was now ready to stone him. The lesson in this story is anyone can turn on you at any time. So be careful who you trust. You have to be like David. When those closest to you turn on you, you better know the Lord so you can encourage yourself in him. I leave you with this final thought today. Not everyone who is with you is for you. The arms of flesh will fail you, and you dare not trust your own. A word to the wise is sufficient indeed. Selah, think and act on these things. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for life. We thank you for health. We thank you for strength. Lord, today we lift up a covering over our great nation. Father, you know the many woes that we are experiencing. You know our deficiencies, our dysfunctions. And so we humbly ask you today to please intervene on our behalf. We ask that you would cause peace and tranquility to prevail over our land. We cover today our law enforcement agencies and ask that you would keep them from harm and danger. Protect them, Almighty God, as they carry out their duties. And now, Father, we pray for our political leaders. And we ask, Almighty God, that you would grant them the wisdom, the courage, the grit, the willpower to make the tough decisions that is needed to restore peace to our land. We pray for our great nation today and ask for your guidance and your protection. Almighty God, bless the proceedings of this house today and continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And all of God's people say, Amen. Let us repeat the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Honorable members, before we take our seat, I'm going to ask the honorable member for South Andrews to lead us in a song along with Fox Hill. Lead me and guide me, oh Lord. Lead me
guide me along the way. For if you lead me, I cannot stray. Lord, let me walk each day with thee. Lead me, O Lord, lead me. Amen.
Thank you, honorable members.
Marvel, Clay Sweeting, Keith Bell, Wayne Monroe, Vaughn Miller, Jobeth Colby Davis, Ginger Moxie, Mario Boleg, Jomo Campbell, Basil McIntosh, Maz LaRota, Pia Glover Roll, Lisa Ramming, Zane Lightbourne, Dr. Hubert Minnis, Jamal Strawn, John Pinder, Marcus Roll, Leon Lundy, Kirk Cornish, Wade Watson, Leonardo Lightbourne, Leslie Miller Bryce, Leroy Major, Sylvanus Petty, Michael Bonnaby, Michael Pintard, James Quasi Thompson, Aram Lewis, Shannon Don Cartwright, Adrian Gibson, Adrian White, Kingsley Smith.
Honorable members, we have an audit from the Auditor General. 2 audits. Audit of the Bahamas Embassy Consulate, Annex, Washington, D.C., and the audit of the Bahamas Embassy, Washington, D.C. Order that the documents to lie on the table. Communications by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Fox Hill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. On the 22nd of January 2025, at members' statements, the member for St. Anne's made certain statements alleging by innuendo improper financial expenditure by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I've received a transcript, and here is what he said in part. My constituents should know that between 2022 and 23, the government has spent over $400,000 just to provide vehicles to the Bahamas Embassy in Washington, D.C. alone. He then listed the cars, and amongst them were BMWs. He continued, and I quote, "In tough times, while we can't get fire trucks on the island," he meant Grand Bahama, "it has been 3 years, and we have over 300,000 US dollar price BMWs up in DC to be driving around VIPs. First, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Grand Bahama was never without the ability to fight fires, and in speaking myself at the material time to the department in Grand Bahama, the officials there pronounced themselves satisfied at all times that they had the ability to meet any fire emergency. In any case, they now have a fully functioning fire truck today. But as a result of the comments of the member for St. Anne's, the press ran a story saying in its headline that the member had criticized, and I quote, "the purchase of BMWs for $300,000. The only problem is that isn't what the member for St. Anne's said, but what he said was so juxtaposed in language as to precisely cause the press error and thereby inflict political damage through inaccuracy. The embassy in Washington, D.C. has not purchased any BMW cars. I am advised and verily believe the embassy is using the same leasing company and leasing arrangements that the F&M's Ambassador Sidney Colley used when he served in Washington for 4 years. The terms and use of the cars have not changed. I am advised and verily believe there is no difference in this matter between when the F&M was in power and now the PLP. The member then could well have said that these BMWs were used to ferry the F&M's ambassadors and VIPs during the height of the COVID epidemic when the country had extreme money problems and the F&M was in power. Times were even tougher then, but the F&M kept the cars. What is sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Marco City.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, I'd like to, with my colleagues, extend condolences to the member of St. Anne's on the passing of his father, and just ask that we all keep their family in prayer. Mr. Deputy, I'm certain the member for St. Anne's would be more than happy once he's gone through this difficult period to respond to comments made. I would only say, on behalf of my colleagues here in Grand Bahama, that we believe it is a complete mischaracterization about the state of affairs in Grand Bahama as it relates to fire. Tremendous amount of anxiety have been suffered and continue to be suffered by residents in Grand Bahama because of the fires. And so, again, for any member to come in the House and give the impression that we are not at risk in Grand Bahama, that things are under control in Grand Bahama, that any official could be satisfied. We have spoken to reserve police officers, as well as officers and other officials, residents in Grand Bahama who we represent. And they are anxiety-stricken, and they know that the state of affairs is not acceptable as it relates to fire trucks. So it is shameful for any member to come in this House who don't live in Grand Bahama to talk nonsense about being satisfied about the state of affairs in Grand Bahama. He does not live there, and clearly is not in touch with the suffering of the people of Grand Bahama.
Thank you.
And it is shameful.
The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Fox Hill.
First of all, Mr. Speaker, I said nothing about risk, and I said nothing about anxiety. I didn't say any of those things. And what I said was that I spoke to the officials, and at no time did they feel they did not have the capacity to deal with the fires. People's anxiety and risk, that's a different issue. You're always mixing apples and oranges, and oranges. So at this point in time, that is the position with regard to firefighting in Grand Bahama. Right, okay.
Thank you.
So, secondly, the issue is that this is communications, not time for spewing arguments. Not time for spewing arguments. I simply answered a narrow point. A narrow point. The member for Parliament misrepresented what it transpires with the embassies in Washington. Say? No, I'm not going to make him withdraw nothing because no. Yeah.
Order,
no.
members.
The problem is the member for St. Anne's was clever enough not to say it directly. So it's by innuendo, but it has to be, the record has to be set straight, and that's all this is. Now, mixing up all this other foolishness about risk and anxiety, typical smoke and mirrorsness. Smoke and mirrors. Smoke and mirrors. Smoke and mirrors. Smoke and mirrors. Smoke and
Order,
mirrors.
members.
Smoke and mirrors. I have. And forest fires.
Order, members.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, forest fires are an annual event in Grand Bahama. Forest fires are an annual event in Grand Bahama. Forest fires are an annual event in Grand Bahama. Forest fires are an annual event in Grand Bahama. Forest fires are an annual event in Grand Bahama. Small
Members.
No, I said no. I called what you said foolishness, and I say it again. What you said was bloody foolishness. What you said is bloody foolishness. Foolishness.
All right, order.
Annually forest fires.
Members,
Annual forest fires.
The chair recognizes
Annual
the honourable
forest
member
fires in Grand
for
Bahama. And the fire
Freetown.
department is equipped. No, you made the mistake.
Order, members.
Mr. Speaker.
You made the mistake. You made the mistake.
Honourable member for Fox Hill and member for Marco City.
Rubbish. Sit down. Sit down.
The-
Sit down and shut up. Sit down.
Members.
Not say that.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Freetown.
I did not say that. I did not say that. Don't come here with that. Don't come here with that. Sit down and shut up talking foolishness all the time. Always mixing up apples and oranges. trying to change the story, your ineptitude as the leader of the opposition. You need to go as leader of the
Mr.
opposition.
Deputy
You
Speaker,
need to go as
point of order.
Honorable member, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Freetown.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I stood initially on the point of order that Fox Hill raised. Quite often it is suggested in here that it is customary to speak whatever you want, whenever you want. Those are not the rules. Fox Hill has had an exposition on that. But Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I stand bearing in mind the communication from Marco City to express condolences to Sinans, who, as he had said, did work with me for a while, and through that I got to meet his father. And so I know their relationship, and so just publicly I would like him to know that certainly my prayers are with him for this time. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have this phenomena where when Marco City and the 4 other persons were in the chair for Grand Bahama, and after Dorian and all the engines were under salt water, they took no steps to order even one fire truck. And this administration, this administration is ordering 15. 15. And because
Order,
of
members, order,
supply chains,
order, members.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker,
Order, members. Members.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, all of the shouting and the record would show, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that once we came in order, we placed an order for them, and we've received 3 so far. And because of supply chains, as Fox Hill says, we are now going to be waiting for the balance. We did in 20 months what they didn't do in 4.5 years. They ordered none, absolutely none, took delivery of none, and now they make noise. Now they make noise, Mr. Deputy Speaker, when we delivered 3 and are delivering more. The party of none is complaining about the party who is doing something.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama. Members, when East Grand Bahama is finished, we're going to stick to the agenda and communications by ministers. We all have a chance to speak further down in the agenda. Thank you. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Deputy, it is sad that we have, from ministers' communication, which are supposed to be non-controversial matters, that it is now escalated to this point. But, Mr. Deputy, we have to correct the record on this. The Progressive Liberal Party has been in power for 3 years. And for 3 years, those officials from the Royal Bahamas Police Force Fire Branch have been asking, they have been writing, they have been asking this government to repair those vehicles. And there are 5 vehicles there. 5. And they have allowed all of those vehicles to go unrepaired. Accept the responsibility for the 3 years that you were in office. And you did nothing. Accept that responsibility. Don't put that on the Free National Movement. You were in office for more than sufficient time to put that there. And the part, Mr. Deputy, I am advised, is a $20,000 part. That could have been done. There are sufficient funds in any budget. We came here 3 times, Mr. Deputy. 3 times we came here and we passed a budget. We provided sufficient funding for the fire branch in Grand Bahama. So why is it that for 3 years, they have gone neglected?
Thank you. Thank you, honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Freetown.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the member for East Grand Bahama, if he spoke to anyone in the fire branch, would know that we have been repairing these engines for 3 years straight. For 3 years straight. And while we were repairing them, we're taking steps to replace them, which should have been done in 2019 when they were all underwater. And so we've repaired them for 3 years, and we're now replacing them, something that we should have done. You can't have 5 members for Grand Bahama, do nothing to help Grand Bahama, and then come here and cry. And come here and cry. You did nothing. You did nothing. You did nothing. You did
All right, thank you,
nothing.
thank you, members.
You did
Order that the documents do lie on the table. Further communications by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Pinewood.
Mr. Deputy, also, before I make my contribution, I too joined the
Order,
member.
members.
I too joined the member for Freetown in wishing the honorable member for St. Anne's condolences and prayers. Having lost my father in 2019, I too know that loss, and may his soul rest in peace. Mr. Deputy, on the 22nd of January, there were, among other things, statement made with regards to the trip of ZNS employees and managers to Washington, D.C., and the cost of some $200,000 that was claimed to have been made by the member for St. Anne's. Also on the 22nd, I gave an undertaking to this House to get the facts as it related to the said trip. I tasked the executive chairman and the general manager of the Broadcasting Corporation to provide me with an account, a detailed account of the associated costs. This report was also placed on the website for the Broadcasting Corporation, but I think it's important to read into the minutes of the House of Assembly that account. And it so reads, dated for the 29th of January. The Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas wishes to address recent comments regarding ZNS's coverage of President Trump's inauguration in Washington, D.C. Assertions that the trip cost over $200,000 are categorically false and misleading. The total cost of the mission was $20,757.29 for a 9-member team. Additionally, sponsorships totaling $32,500 were secured, resulting in a net revenue of just under $12,500 for the corporation. This trip was approved by the chairman of the BCB on behalf of the board. The ZNS team, upon invitation from our ministry, delivered extensive news coverage across all platforms, including live broadcasts and interviews with key figures such as the Bahamas Ambassador Wendell Jones, Dr. Ben Carson, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, South Carolina State Senator Kent Williams, Armstrong Williams, Bahamas Ambassador to the OAS Chet Nemor, and Austin Cooper. These interviews and discussions, primarily conducted in person, focus on the implication of a Trump presidency for the Bahamas and critical topics such as climate change, migration, and economics. The coverage, which was partially organized by our ministry, also highlighted the achievements of the outstanding Bahamians in the diaspora and who was volunteering during the inauguration. ZNS collaborated with the Bahamas Embassy in Washington to address significant issues and showcase Bahamian contributions abroad. The event served as a training and professional development opportunity for ZNS staff, further strengthening the corporation's capabilities in delivering high-quality news coverage. It is important to clarify that all expenses were covered by sponsorship. Claims suggesting otherwise are not only inaccurate, but disregard the corporation's ongoing efforts to secure partnerships and manage operational costs effectively. Early planning allowed the team to minimize costs, such as securing airline tickets and utilizing cost-effective accommodation and transportation. ZNS has a mandate to cover stories that matter to Bahamians, whether within our borders or internationally. This mission exemplified the corporation's commitment to keeping the public informed while fostering growth and exposure for its staff. The success of the initiative underscores ZNS's ability to operate efficiently and generate revenue through strategic partnerships, even as it fulfills its duty to provide world-class coverage. Special thanks to the Ministry of Social Services, Information and Broadcasting, in particular consultant Debbie Bartlett, for the initial invitation and for helping to facilitate important contacts. Suggestions that the trip was wasteful or excessive are unfounded and fail to recognize the value of such initiatives in advancing ZNS's mission. As the Bahamas national broadcaster, ZNS will continue to deliver on its mandate to inform, educate, and connect Bahamians to the world. Please see the breakdown of sponsors and list as follows. Pardon me? Mr. Deputy, considering the climate that we're in, I would prefer not to call out these individuals who would have acted in good faith.
And I appreciate that, Pinewood.
Expenses are as follows, Mr. Deputy. Airline tickets on American Airlines were a total of $3,222.99. A&B accommodation was $7,394.30, and that is for 5 nights plus taxes for an 8-room Airbnb. Alamo rental for 2 vehicles, $1,700, and per diem of $7,440, $100 a day, and $20 a day for line staff, $135 for managers, pay executives, $250. Miscellaneous expenses were $1,000, for which included baggage, parking, and equipment. And the total expenses, $20,757.29, and the net profit from this venture was $11,742.71, Mr. Deputy. Okay. Mr. Deputy, for the sensitivity, I would
Order that the communications be brought up. Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the communications do lie on the table. Further communications by ministers? Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Deputy, we have in the gallery 3 young men, and they are from my old alma mater, Mary Star of the Sea School, but I will allow the member from Marco City to make the introductions, as Mary Star is in Marco City's constituency. So, Mr. Deputy, I'll turn it over to the member.
The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Marco City.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy and member for East Grand Bahama, we are very much pleased to have with us this morning 3 outstanding students who are here for the Catholic School Spelling Bee. We have Mr. Matt Alcala, along with Mr. Reese Ingram and Mr. David Francis. And we want to recognize them. And some of the persons who are accompanying them today is Mrs. Shimon Cambridge, who is their instructor, and of course, Ms. Johnson, who is the principal of the school and doing an amazing job. And all of the others who are here supporting them, please stand so that we may. Oh, Rashima, Ms. Rashima Ingram is also here, and Matt's mom is also here. So congratulations to all of you, and we wish you well in the upcoming competition.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Freetown.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I feel compelled to stand to congratulate the 3 young men, particularly with what we see in education, where usually the females excel. It is refreshing to see 3 young men representing their school.
Thank you, honorable member. Introduction and swearing in of new members. Laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Freetown.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of 5 documents, the first being the Registrar of Companies Act 2024, appointed day notice 2025.
Order that the documents be brought up. Order that the documents do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
The second document is the
Mr. Forbes.
Registrar of Records Act 2024, appointed day notice 2025.
Order that the documents be brought up. Order that the documents do lie on the table.
The third document, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is the Patents Act 2024, appointed day notice 2025.
Order that the documents do lie on the table.
The fourth document is the Trademarks Act 2024, appointed day notice 2025.
Order that the documents be brought up. Order that the documents do lie on the table.
The final document is the Copyright Act 2024, appointed day notice 2025.
Order that the documents be brought up. See that, Mr. Forbes? Order that the documents do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
No further laying of
Thank you, honorable member. Statements and communications by ministers. No. Message from the Governor General. Message from the Senate. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign, seat, and new writs. Presentations of petitions. Presentations of reports of committees. Adoption of reports of committees. First reading of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Freetown.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg leave to have read for the first time a bill for an act to constitute an independent commission to conduct investigations into allegations of participation in serious breaches of the law by members of the security forces and specified public officials, to provide for the functions, powers, organization, and management of the commission, and for connected offenses.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that a bill for an act to constitute an independent commission to conduct investigations into allegations of participation in serious breaches of the law by members of the security forces and specified public officials, to provide for the functions, powers, organization, and management of the commission and for connected matters. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read a first time and table.
A bill for an act to constitute an independent commission to conduct investigations into allegations of participation in serious breaches of the law by members of the security forces and specified public officials, to provide for the functions, powers, organization, and management of the commission, and for connected matters.
Further first readings?
Reading.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Second reading and committal of bills. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Where's the current agenda? Could I have a current agenda, please? I rise to initiate the second reading and passing of a compendium of bills relating to the movable property security interest bill, which will be the
Honorable Member, can you read the long title of the bill, please?
I'm trying to find the bill now. Yeah. No, I know, but I won't find it. I see, yeah. Okay, I got it, yeah. No, I have it, okay, yeah. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise for the second reading and passing of a compendium of bills which I invite Parliament to debate singularly, with the lead principal bill being a bill for an act to modernize the law governing transactions in movable property security interests. The other bills that I invite us to include in the compendium, which are all related, and these bills are, in fact, consequential amendments to these various bills as a result of the passing and further enactment of the bill to modernize the law governing transactions in movable property. These bills would be affected. And those bills are a bill for an act to amend the Bahamas Cooperative Societies Act, a bill for an act to amend the Bahamas Cooperative Unions Act, a bill for an act to amend the Sale of Goods Act, a bill for an act to amend the Stamp Act, a bill for an act to amend the Money Lending Act, a bill for an act to amend the International Business Companies Act, a bill for an act to amend the Companies Act, a bill for an act to amend the Choices in Action Act, a bill for an act to amend the Bankruptcy Act. And, Mr. Deputy Speaker, just to ensure that everyone understands those bills are number on the agenda are number 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, no, sorry, 85, 87, 88, and 91. 91 being the principal and overarching bill. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as indicated today, we have before us an opportunity to help Bahamian entrepreneurs gain access to the credit, funding, and financing they need to realize their dreams. We are opening the door for more Bahamians to secure loans and pursue success. As I indicated, there are a compendium of bills, many of which is just consequential amendments as a result of the principal bill that I will speak to later. And that is what I call the primary legislation that's before us. The Transactions in Movable Property Security Interest Bill, 2024. I think it'll be cleaner just to call it the Movable Property Security Interest Bill, 2024, and I've asked the Attorney General and the Law Reform to so seek that movement during the course of the committee hearing. This bill represents, Mr. Deputy Speaker, a departure from the way loans are typically secured in our nation. Currently, the vast majority of financial institutions typically accept immovable property as a form of collateral to secure loans. Immovable property meaning land, real estate. Immovable property, of course, refers to assets, like I said, like land, buildings, and other real estate holdings. This is the way things have been for many years, many, many years. I guess I sometimes say from time immemorial. And for a majority of local businesses, this reality has made it very difficult to gain access to credit to scale up their businesses. This is especially the case for small and medium-sized enterprises, or as I call it, small and medium-sized business owners. For example, think about the mom and pop shops. The majority of these businesses don't typically own land or valuable buildings. Most of these businesses are housed through tenancy. But that doesn't mean that they have nothing of value to offer. For example, they own machinery, inventory, equipment, vehicles, accounts receivables. They may even own intellectual property that has great value. However, our antiquated system has not recognized the diverse range of assets that represent the true value held by business owners. And that's not the only problem. Access to capital has been further limited by the increasingly conservative and extremely risk-averse approach that regional banks have taken over the past several decades. Businesses too often fail to qualify for loans or qualify for much less than they really need. There's been no formal, consistent means of assessing accounts receivable as collateral for a loan, the result of which has been inconsistent outcomes and interest rates that are too high. Business owners have been told, if you want to qualify for more credit or receive lower interest rate, you should use your assets as collateral. This sounds good in theory, but the reality has been very impractical. If you don't own a movable property, like land, you will have a very hard time using your assets to secure that loan. And even if you have acceptable collateral, you often have to put collateral worth much more than the value of the loan you're getting. It's been said that the regional value average of collateral is actually 231% more than the loan value. This old way of doing business is far too limiting, especially in the era of startups and innovation. We believe in the talent of Bahamian entrepreneurs whose hard work and innovations propel change and prosperity, which is why we worked hard on policies and laws to support Bahamian progress and success. This act is part of our larger effort to change the rules and constraints which have stood in the way of a more dynamic, inclusive economy, one in which more Bahamians can realize their dreams. Madam Speaker, small and medium-sized enterprises make up approximately 90% of the businesses in our nation. When they succeed, we all succeed. Yet our country's legal and regulatory system has too often set up barriers for Bahamian businesses, constraining their success. A central bank diagnostic study confirmed what many business owners can tell you, which is that the status quo does not support the financing needs of today's entrepreneurs. Nor does the current system meet the standards of the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law. There is a global consensus on what a modern pro-business lending framework looks like. Today, we are bringing our laws on par with that international standard. SMEs, small and medium business enterprises, typically don't own land, and in fact, the majority of them are tenants, and most assets held are movable property, like vehicles, machinery, stock and trade, accounts receivables. As mentioned, there is international consensus on the principles required in a legal framework conducive to a dynamic and modern lending market where movable property could be used to access finance. What this compendium of bills, I've listed them already, essentially accomplishes is the creation of a legal framework for the recognition of what we call movable property as collateral for loans. By recognizing movable property, we allow lending institutions to take into account assets beyond land and other real estate holdings. This could be in the form of valuable goods, documents of title, existing investment holdings, cash, and other instruments of value, accounts receivable, owned by an individual or group applying for a loan. So assets, like I said before, like vehicles and equipment, will now be taken into account when businesses apply for loans. Accounts receivables, as I've said, or the amount of money set to come into a business will now be properly and fairly taken into account. I will repeat that for all business owners who have been rejected for loans, even when they have been making considerable profits, they'll now be able to take advantage of this new initiative. But once this law is rolled out, the money coming into your business will now be taken into account in a standardized and fair way. Madam Deputy Speaker, not Madam, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The compendium of bills before us today strengthens our legal and regulatory framework in several ways. First of all, it provides a comprehensive approach to the governing of secure transactions involving movable property. We have the primary bill before us, which provides the overall framework, and we have 9 other bills supporting this primary bill, which all allow for movable property to be taken into account in existing laws related to the recognition of assets for bankruptcy purposes and choices in action to facilitate the recovery of money in the court of law. These supporting bills also ensure a consistent approach for laws related to companies, including IBCs, credit unions, the sale of goods, money lending, and other related activities. The new legal framework will create consistent regulations to address movable assets, like accounts receivables, where there has previously been no formal structure in place. It also makes our approach more consistent with the suggested United Nations Commission on International Law and Trade framework, and paves the way for a modern approach to the registration of secured transactions. Our current approach to registering secured transactions is analog, outdated, and far too slow to accommodate the fast pace of 21st century business. In fact, even if we wanted to speed things up by allowing for a digital rather than analog process for registering secure transactions, our existing systems sadly cannot accommodate a digital collateral registry. So this bill paves the way for the complete digitalization of the registration process for secure transactions involving movable property to facilitate faster business decisions. So when you look at the bill, Clause 5 and 6, respectively, make provisions for the establishment of a collateral registry and the appointment of a registrar of the registry. This registry is to be kept in electronic form, providing for the registration of information in respect of movable property security interest by electronic means as will be prescribed by regulations. And the registry shall be responsible for the registration of security interests in movable property. The Act would apply to every transaction that creates a security interest without regard to the form of the transaction, type of movable property, status of the debtor, secured creditor, the person who owns the title to the collateral, or the nature of the secured obligation. Generally, a security interest is the interest or right in movable property created by an agreement to secure payment or other performance of an obligation which is usually evidenced by a security agreement between a debtor and secured creditor. Basically, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the recognition of movable assets combined with a digital collateral registry is a game changer for local businesses and lenders. The Movable Property Security Interest Bill 2024 will govern the ways credit is secured with movable property in the Bahamas by providing creditors with the possibility of taking an interest in the debtor's movable property. It allows for a wide range of tangible assets like inventory, equipment, livestock, and crops to be considered as collateral. Imagine the small business owners who will have doors that were once closed open, now that their inventory can be recognized as collateral for a loan. Imagine the farmers who will be able to expand their operations now that livestock and crops can be registered and accepted as collateral. Of course, as I mentioned, intangible assets like accounts receivables and intellectual property will also now count as collateral. There is a future inventor somewhere in this nation who will now have doors to success open to them as they gain access to credit to turn their innovative ideas into a successful business. The process by which security interests are created and security agreements are made is fully outlined in clauses 6 to 18 of this bill, covering the full range of movable property that can be considered. It also outlines the requirements for a security agreement between a debtor and a creditor, which includes the signing of the agreements, the intent to create a security interest, identification of both parties, the identification of the collateral, the maximum amount for which the security interest may be enforced, the value of the movable property, and the rights of the debtor in relation to the collateral. The bill also covers the perfection of security interests, which outlines how a security interest is created and is effective against third parties by control, possession, or registration. Two components are necessary to render a security agreement perfected: the creation of a valid security interest and its publication, either by possession, registration, or control, as I mentioned earlier. The bill also has statutory priority rules to determine the rights among competing claims. Generally, priority will be based on the time and date of registration, and because of the streamlined efficiency that a digital collateral registry will provide, priority can be easily proven and or shown. Further down in this bill, we see the complete process for registering a property as collateral. We also have general provisions for damages due to failure to comply with the law, as well as the requirements for a creditor to provide information related to the secured agreement upon request. In the interest of transparency and to ensure that the debtor is fully informed of their obligations. Mr. Deputy Speaker, offenses pursuant to this bill will incur fines of up to $20,000 or imprisonment sentence of up to 5 years or both. And if we go down to Clause 104, this clause speaks to the overriding power of this law in relation to any conflict arising between this bill and other written laws or regulations. In such cases, the provisions of this bill will prevail. This ensures a smooth rollout of the law and makes it clear where the law stands on these matters. We are also allowing for a smooth transition for security interests created prior to the enactment of this bill. In essence, any enforceable security interest established prior to the enactment will remain enforceable during the transitional period. During that transitional period, those security interests will be required to be perfected according to the updated standards. A lot of work has gone into the creation of a bill, this bill, that is fully aligned with our local needs as well as international best practices. I want to thank the teams at Finance, the Attorney General's Office, the Central Bank, and other experts and stakeholders who have contributed to the creation of this bill. We believe we have before us a modern, comprehensive, and powerful compendium of bills that will achieve our objective of expanding access to finance for Bahamian businesses. Small and medium-sized businesses, as I mentioned before, are the lifeblood of our economy. Today, we are helping entrepreneurs to finance their plans for business startups and expansions. We are reforming a banking sector that has grown stagnant and limits rather than empowers local businesses. We are helping lenders make more informed decisions and choices so they will be more willing to give local businesses loans based on a comprehensive view of all assets and property owned. People have clamored for these changes for years to no avail. And finally, all the years of assessment, analysis, and development will now yield results for Bahamian businesses. You know, the proposed bill, as it then was incorporated into the central bank's public consultation paper, proposed legislation to modernize the secured credit transaction systems in the Bahamas. And since July 2022, the proposed bill has been under public consultation through the central bank. It was shared with the Chamber of Commerce, the Bar Association, the Clearing Bank Association, and the Bahamas Financial Services Board. What we debate here today is the result. With the many challenges faced by local businesses, this bill represents meaningful progress toward greater ease of doing business and access to credit that will be a boost to our business community. This is just another example of how we are fighting to change the status quo and deliver on our agenda to create a fairer and more prosperous Bahamas for everyone. Today, we are delivering this bill on behalf of all small and medium-sized enterprises throughout this nation. You know, this bill is part of our wider plan to empower local businesses through expanding access to funding. It complements the tens of millions in grants and loans approved each year via the SBDC and BDB, which has helped many different business owners, including youth entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, farmers, fishers, as well as tourism entrepreneurs. But we're not stopping there. Our energy reforms will bring electricity costs down for households and businesses. We are lowering VAT on food items, and we are exploring new pathways for trade that will facilitate access to new markets to import essential goods at lower prices. These initiatives will ultimately bring savings to consumers and businesses. Our economic development plans are spurring growth, helping businesses to succeed, and bringing unemployment down to its lowest levels in many, many years, more than 17. In the long term, we will transform, diversify, and expand our economy for the benefit of households and businesses at every level of our society. New laws, new policies, like the compendium before us, have a major role to play in setting up the framework for our transformation. Mr. Deputy Speaker, on behalf of the people of Cat Island, Rumpkins, and Salvador, I place my full support behind these compendium of 10 bills centered on the recognition of movable property as collateral and the creation of a digital collateral registry to expand access to credit and empower Bahamian businesses. I move that these bills do pass.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
I rise on behalf of the people of Exumas and Ragged Island to throw my full support behind this compendium. Let me firstly thank Prime Minister and Minister of Finance for a very comprehensive and detailed explanation as to the purpose, objectives of this compendium. And when we look at the fact that we are discussing 10 bills, it might seem heady or hefty, but this is fairly straightforward. And I am delighted to be able to speak briefly to further demystify what might at first seem like very complicated legislation. Due to the simplicity of this matter, Mr. Deputy, I foreshadow that this will be a short and straightforward debate. And I anticipate the absolute support of the other side, who I'm certain will have great appreciation for the work that we are doing to empower Bahamians. Mr. Deputy, before I proceed further, may I publicly commend every Bahamian who participated in the local government elections recently on behalf of the minister responsible, all who offered themselves as candidates, and all who voted, all who were selected to councils across the Family Islands. I truly commend their participation. This is a great way to deepen democracy and put more power in the hands of the people. Mr. Deputy, as it relates to these bills, some of what I say will frankly be repetitive to what has been said already. But in summary, we're seeking to permit Bahamians to be able to efficiently pledge movable assets, like their inventory, to banks as collateral to borrow money. It opens doors for Bahamians by revolutionizing access to credit and creating opportunities for growth and innovation. As promised in our Blueprint for Change, we're advancing policy that seek to empower Bahamians, as we have done and continue to do through the Tourism Development Corporation, the Tourism Development Fund, the Small Business Development Center, and other agencies of the government. I want to acknowledge the commendable work of the many agencies involved with bringing us to this point: the Office of the Attorney General, the Central Bank, the Ministry of Finance, and the Ministry of Economic Affairs, and others who played critical role in this forward-looking compendium. This bill has been in consultation, as the Prime Minister pointed out, for quite some time. It's been widely supported, including by the Clearing Banks Association. The efforts of all involved collectively reflect our shared goal of equipping the Bahamas with tools that foster an inclusive and thriving economy. Today, we move another step closer to fulfilling our commitment to addressing systemic challenges in our financial and business landscape. This bill is a practical tool designed to empower, as I've said. It introduces a robust framework for leveraging movable property, such as inventory, equipment, receivables, as collaterals. For far too long, traditional lending practices have overly relied on real estate as the primary means of securing loans. This, of course, has left many capable and industrious Bahamians without access to the financial support they need to expand their business or to get into business in the first place. I've had the good fortune to have been encouraged by my mother, who had wisdom to invest in real estate very early in my career, and therefore I had been the beneficiary of the boom in the economy of Exuma as a result of the development of the Four Seasons Resort. And I had been able to use the appreciated value of the land as support for buying a business. That is still generally very, very sound advice even today. But many, unfortunately, do not or did not have the luxury of that advice. And therefore, the Movable Property Security Interest Bill will help. Consider the entrepreneur running a startup. They have an excellent idea, the skills to execute it, and even a budding customer base. But they go to the bank. They don't have real estate or real collateral, as the banks would say, and therefore the door to their dreams is sometimes closed. This bill reopens the doors by enabling lenders to accept movable property as collateral in a standardized and legally secure way. Where it's a fisherman leveraging his boat in Anagua, a contractor using his tools in Andros, or a small housekeeper, a shopkeeper in Little Exuma using her inventory or even accounts receivable. This legislation improves their chances to access the financing they need. Over time, I fully expect that this bill will favorably move the needle in this space. At the moment, there is the floating debenture or the floating charge system that has to be stamped and lodged with the registrar. It's very cumbersome, time-consuming, inefficient, and difficult to enforce. For example, vehicles are regularly sold without the permission of the lender. And whilst the lender can still repossess the car, the buyer is duped and left holding the bag. This will help to resolve issues like that with bad actors. This initiative dovetails seamlessly with the broader ecosystem that we are cultivating to support SMEs, as Cat Island, Rumpis, and Salvador rightly pointed out. We're not just focused on startups, though. Established businesses with steady operations but limited cash flows also stand to benefit. They can leverage their tangible and intangible assets to access loans that will enable them to scale their operations, to grow their operations, to hire more workers, and contribute to our national prosperity. They can empower themselves. They can create wealth, just like we promised we would encourage and support in our blueprint for change. The reforms we are introducing will also enhance the predictability and transparency of the lending process, which is crucial in ensuring confidence amongst borrowers and lenders. Importantly, a centralized electronic register which contains all records of security interests in movable properties will be accessible online in real time. This is critical to help to avoid the problem I noted earlier. Mr. Deputy, by providing a clear and efficient mechanism for registering security interests in movable property, we reduce uncertainty and promote economic activity. This is a win-win for everyone. Lenders can better assess risk, and borrowers can better understand their obligations. This legislation is part of a larger framework of efforts by the Progressive Liberal Party administration to create a transformative effect and impact on the lives of Bahamians. We're addressing challenges from every angle. We're innovating and legislating to bring about major shifts that will benefit generations to come. We're not yet where we want to be in terms of ease of doing business, and we sadly acknowledge that there's still a lot of ground to cover on this vexing issue. We plan to continue to confront these issues over the next 2 years. We're up to the challenge to continue to work hand in hand with the business community and entrepreneurs to drive growth, to empower Bahamians, and to create robust opportunities for Bahamians. So whether it's the introduction of progressive reforms, energy reforms, or the building of new roads, or new schools, or hospitals, or initiatives aimed at reducing the cost of living, we're working tirelessly to tackle issues across all fronts. We are working tirelessly to get more Bahamians invested in all sectors of the economy, including tourism. And while some may question the pace or scope of the reforms we are making, I want us not to lose sight and not forget to celebrate the achievements that we have in fact made. By the end of this first term of our administration, I am confident that we will see a Bahamas transformed for the better, a country more equitable, more resilient, more prosperous, with a more robust economy. It is also worth emphasizing that this legislation is not just for small businesses, but for medium-sized businesses as well, and large businesses, and for the entire economy. In fact, I foreshadow that there may be some new business ideas and opportunities as a result of securitizing of accounts receivable, for example. In some countries, there are robust businesses surrounding accounts receivable factoring, where you can buy accounts receivable, you can collateralize now, and you can create liquidity for your business, the business involved in factoring, but also the business on the other end who is selling those receivables. And therefore, this is progressive. When our SMEs flourish, our economy flourishes. When businesses can access credit, they create jobs, and they create wealth for Bahamians. When they succeed, they pay taxes. They contribute to national development. And overall, there is what I call the rising tide effect. We all succeed. It's a cycle of prosperity that benefits us all. And this is why this administration is proudly pro-business. And to our colleagues on the other side of the chamber, I urge you to support the real-world impact of this legislation and do so with your vote and your voice. Do so wholeheartedly. This is not abstract policy. This is about real people, real businesses, and real opportunities. It is about the vendor at Potter's Key, the farmer in North Andros, and the tow operator in Exuma. This bill empowers them to participate more fully in our economy. Mr. Deputy, as we debate this bill, we must continue to remember the broader vision for the Bahamas. This bill, like many we've brought before, is a declaration of our belief in the potential of every Bahamian. It says that we are willing to innovate, we are willing to adapt and take bold steps to build an inclusive economy that leaves no one behind. Mr. Deputy, I've been actively engaged in banking financial services for what seems like a lifetime. And banks have routinely been conservative creatures with a primary mandate of protecting depositors. I'm still not overly optimistic yet, Mr. Deputy, that this posture will change, although we know it must. And as policyholders, we encourage it to transform. And in short, we say to banks and financial institutions that as we innovate, they too must innovate. I call on them to push the envelope, perhaps open venture capital firms in the Bahamas, as their parents do in New York and Toronto and elsewhere around the world. These arms can have a more robust risk appetite, and the government can look to support these moves and encourage them even further. I call on them, if only, to allocate some of their profits to start these arms of business from those profits. And I believe with them working hand in hand with us, we will continue to move the needle to empower even more Bahamians. What I'm saying is that innovation is needed in this space, and local banks must push their parent companies along with the support of the government to see more innovation in this arena. And though we celebrate the work done thus far, we recognize that there is still more to do. We must continue to support these legislative changes and their robust implementation. We must encourage and support public awareness campaigns and the necessary institutional reforms to ensure their success. We can pass the legislation, but we call on the Clearing Banks Association, we call on my colleagues at the Chamber of Commerce and other such organizations to drive stakeholder public education on the reforms that we are making in this place. And to our business community and entrepreneurs, we hear you, and we are taking action to make it easier for you to thrive. And to the people of the Bahamas, I want you to know that this government remains committed to building a brighter future for you and many more who will come after you. Mr. Deputy, suffice to say, as I've said before, I support this bill, I support the compendium, and I look forward to continuing to work with the government, the business community, Clearing Banks Association, to continue to drive innovation for the benefit and the empowerment of Bahamians. May God bless the people of Exumas and Ragged Island, and may God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
Second this compendium.
Thank you, honourable member. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to modernize the law governing transactions in movable property security interests. As many, the chair recognizes the honourable member for East Grand Bahama. Member.
Good morning, honorable member. You may proceed.
Thank you very much. Stand in this place and to speak on behalf of the good and the special people in the East Grand Bahama constituency. Let me say it first off, Madam Speaker, that those of us on this side, we support the compendium of bills. The main bill, which originated from the central bank, from concerns within the Bahamas regarding limited access to finance, particularly for small and medium-sized enterprises. As I recall, the central bank during the last F&M administration started working on these bills. Madam Speaker, there is no doubt that the F&M was and is good for the private sector in the Bahamas. In the fiscal year 2021, over $44 million was granted in tax credits to businesses, and $53 million in loans and grants by the Small Business Development Center for small businesses, a feat that I don't believe has been matched. The F&M was focused on improving the ease of doing business, focused on improving digitization, focused on improving the wait time for new businesses, and focused on renewal business licenses. But, Madam Speaker, our country, on many fronts, really is facing a crisis on a number of fronts. One of those fronts, which we are talking about today, is small business funding and the ease of doing business. But we have situations like U.S. indictments of senior police officers, unwanted reminders of the 1970s and 80s. We have senior police officers who were responsible for criminal investigations, who are accused themselves of serious offenses. We have a U.S. court questioning payments for entities linked to top advisors of the then Bahamas government. And then we have a situation where members of the opposition were dragged out of the House of Assembly. Making matters worse, last week, shutting down the debate in Parliament. Madam Speaker, it is a dangerous path when you seek to shut down the voice of the opposition. Some anonymous quotes the freedom of dissent is the foundation of democracy.
Yes.
Another quote, a government that silences dissent is a government that fears its people. The first step to authoritarianism is silencing those who disagree. Mahatma Gandhi said, opposition is not a threat. It is necessary for progress. What is most troubling about these controversies is the government's persistent failure to provide real answers and solutions. This administration, I believe, has mastered the art of evasion.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Caroline from Kingston, Salvador.
I mean, it is disingenuous to suggest that we are seeking to quiet voices in opposition. In this place, there are rules. And the one thing he's not said is that what occurred in these precincts was against the rules. There are rules. We apply by the rules. When you talk about quieting the opposition, the voices, we don't look. Anyone who would have just recall that dark period from 2017 to 2021. Just think about that. I mean, if we would play the meetings, many sessions, we were unable to speak and did not speak. But that I did not carry on like this. I held accusing you all of quieting. I held, unless when I saw the speaker was breaching the rules, I point out he breached the rules. But what I did, Madam Speaker, but I couldn't say it here. I advised East Grand Bahama last week. I'd come back to speak myself, right? I said, but the issue is, everybody believes that you have to say it here. Every week, from between 2012 to 2021, almost every week, I held a press conference. You have the opportunity to say what you want to say. Outside, you don't have to be here. And so here you have to abide by the rules. You speak when you speak in the court. You're engaged with the rules. So it is destined. In here, if you don't comply with the rules, then you are shut down. And then when you get shut down, you go outside and speak. That is where, now when you see me stopping you from speaking outside, then I can hear you suggesting that.
Thank you, honorable member.
Madam Speaker, this pattern of neglect not only undermines our institutions, but it also insults the intelligence of every Bahamian who expects accountability from their leaders. Madam Speaker, while the bills can potentially increase what can be used for collateral, I actually agree with portions of what the member for Exuma was saying. That while this can potentially increase what can be used for collateral, there is much more, particularly on the actions of the bank, that is required to be done. And I believe the bills miss an opportunity to achieve those things. The government may boast about facilitating easier access to loans and businesses. However, do these bills themselves have the necessary incentives for banks to meaningfully increase lending, especially to the small business sectors? In the same light, the government has done little to protect Bahamians from businesses. And in this regard, I agree to what the member for Fox Hill has said on other occasions. We continue to witness banks in our country pile on more fees and charges on Bahamian customers, while at the same time providing less and less customer service. The member for Marcos City has already articulated a plan on banking reform. Madam Speaker, almost 2/3 of Bahamian businesses say the fees charged by commercial banks need major improvements, according to a recent survey by our very own Central Bank of the Bahamas. The Bahamas should have a financial ombudsman that has a range of enforcement powers and tools to allow it to investigate, powers of cease and desist orders, reprimands such as confidential cautions, or to be able to put reprimand letters and fines in banking and in insurance disputes. So we do have a financial ombudsman, but the financial ombudsman doesn't have the powers that is required to make a meaningful impact. We must give the existing financial ombudsman more power, more teeth, and more independence. Madam Speaker, while the expanded range of movable assets as collateral might be beneficial, it does not address the banks having overly cautious lending practices. The bill focuses on what can be used as collateral, but it doesn't address the likelihood of banks actually accepting certain assets as sufficient security, especially when lending to small businesses. Madam Speaker, the reality is banks are more likely to lend to businesses with a proven track record, strong financials, and substantial collateral that can easily be liquidated in case of default. This makes it difficult for small businesses, particularly startups or those in less established industries, to obtain loans. That's the problem. While the bill expands the type of movable property that can be used as collateral, I don't believe it does anything to change the risk calculations that banks use when evaluating loan applications. We still face the problem that banks may still be hesitant to accept certain assets, such as specialized equipment and intellectual property. For example, accurately assessing the market value of some of movable assets can be challenging, making banks uncertain about their potential recovery in case of default. There also may be a limited resale market. Some movable assets may have a limited or specialized resale market, making it difficult for banks to quickly liquidate in case of default. Depreciation. The value of certain movable assets, such as vehicles, technology, or technical equipment, can depreciate so rapidly that it reduces the value as on collateral over time. So, Madam Speaker, we need bold initiatives that encourage banks to partner with businesses, not just prioritize their own security. What these bills do is they allow the banks to access more things for security. But we need incentives that will actually incentivize banks to loan more to businesses. Because even if we increase what can be used as collateral, who is to say that banks will still use that same criteria when it comes to accessing the collateral and loaning the funds? So we need to focus on incentivizing banks to actually loan additional monies. We need, Madam Speaker, more industry-targeted government-backed loan programs that are specifically targeted for small business development. We need things like interest rate subsidies or tax breaks for banks that actively lend to specific industries and specific locations. Why couldn't we tie into the amount of monies that are being loaned out to small businesses can be tied to a tax break that the bank actually gets? We need more tax breaks on equipment and inventory. So for example, for the actual small businesses themselves, when we were in office, we made sure that when it comes to you purchasing equipment, you were able to purchase equipment for your business duty-free. Well, we should actually extend that. Why could we not provide tax break for small businesses to where that would extend to inventory, that would extend to not just customs duty, but also extend to VAT on equipment, VAT also on inventory, also tax breaks when it comes to business licenses, when it comes to specific startups that we want to focus and we want to build in a specific industry. The bill focuses, Madam Speaker, heavily on enhancing security for lenders. However, without addressing the core issues of incentivizing banks to take calculated risk and support emerging businesses, the impact on actual lending practices will still be limited. The bills also should encourage the growth of, and I agree with the member for Exuma, I believe he was talking to the same people that we were talking to. The bills should also encourage the growth of venture capital in the Bahamas. A policy initiative could be added to these bills that speaks to encouraging venture capital. This initiative would incentivize the creation of venture capital arms by allowing financial institutions to designate a percentage of their profits. I think it sounds a little familiar. To incentivize, to allow financial institutions to designate a percentage of their profits into, I was there too, into a separate risk vehicle for venture capital investments. But again, it is a point where you are encouraging, incentivizing businesses to allocate a bank, to allocate a portion of their profits that will go towards venture capital functions. And that is where I believe we need to be moving towards. Madam Speaker, the Small Business Development Center. I believe the SBDC has been one of the most impactful institutions that was created by the F&M government. But I believe it is starved for resources. Madam Speaker, there is a glaring absence.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
Madam Speaker, I wouldn't want for East Grand Bahama to rewrite history. The Small Business Development Center was conceived under the leadership of the Honorable Michael Alkides in partnership with the University of Bahamas, the Entrepreneurship Center. The previous administration did support the SBDC and did
the SBDC
work to provide funding for the SBDC.
Create the SBDC.
It is fiction. It is fiction. It is absolute fiction, Madam Speaker, for the member to suggest that the F&M created the SBDC. There was no time in history where the Honorable Michael Alkides was a member Of the FNM.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
And I stand by that. Because I was there. I was there. Madam Speaker, I was there. So I stand by that. I was there. I was there when it was created. So as I said, Madam Speaker, the Small Business Development Center has been one of the most impactful institutions that was created by the FNM government. Madam Speaker, there is a glaring absence of any mention of the Small Business Development Center in any of these bills.
Be careful now.
This institution, which is tasked with providing crucial guidance and support for entrepreneurs and small businesses, and which I believe has been underfunded and underutilized by this government. The Small Business Development Center should be a cornerstone of any government strategy to promote entrepreneurship and economic diversification. These bills should have been accompanied by increased funding commitment for the SBDC to expand its capacity and its services. These bills should have been accompanied by provisions for closer collaboration between the SBDC and the new collateral registry to ensure that small businesses are properly guided through the complexities of secured transactions. Madam Speaker, this whole concept is new to the Bahamas. The Small Business Development Center is the institution that guides and assists small businesses, not just in terms of funding, but they also provide better, how you do your business better, how you can operate your business better. They help small businesses. They should have been integrated in these pieces of legislation. Failing to strengthen the SBDC alongside the introduction of a new legal framework for secure transactions, it demonstrates a disconnect between the PLP rhetoric and its actions. Madam Speaker, these bills also fail to address the urgent need for a comprehensive policy framework to incentivize businesses in specific industries crucial for economic diversification. Everyone talks about diversification, that we should not just rely on tourism and banking. But you have not put enough action to match the words that you have been speaking. The Bahamas cannot afford to remain overly reliant on banking and tourism. We must actively foster growth in areas like agriculture, fisheries, technology, innovation, manufacturing, light industry. By failing to introduce policies that encourage investment in these and other key industries, the government demonstrates what I believe is a lack of vision and commitment to building a more resilient and diversified Bahamian economy. Madam Speaker, we also need to focus more on things like making more Crown land available, particularly in Grand Bahama and the Family Islands, to use for business ventures. It is a tool that actually could be used in your whole arsenal to help small businesses. I know for us in East Grand Bahama, we could use as in many Family Islands, we could use a program that will allow for small businesses who are guided by the Small Business Development Center, registered with the Small Business Development Center, to access Crown land and then to also access funding through that Crown land program. They also, Madam Speaker, to use in business ventures, again, particularly in the constituency of East Grand Bahama.
New ideas every day.
We could use in East Grand Bahama things like supermarkets, hardware stores, Airbnbs, pharmacies. All of these things are what we could use and what could be helped by providing Crown land for business owners and would incentivize banks to loan funds to small businesses. Madam Speaker, in addition to providing Crown land for small businesses, we also need to implement and to fund, properly implement and properly fund the Ombudsman, and properly implement and to fund and bring into force the Freedom of Information Act. When it comes also, Madam Speaker, to fiscal matters, we have seen where in the IMF report, we've seen where the IMF report speaks to the Fiscal Responsibility Council. But I know I have not seen the government make any new announcement about the reconstitution of this Fiscal Responsibility Council. So the IMF report implies that they were told that the Fiscal Responsibility Council has been reconstituted. My question is, if it has been reconstituted, why haven't you told the public about it? So we need to understand what is the status of the Fiscal Responsibility Council. Because again, the Fiscal Responsibility Council is important when it comes to all government spending. So if the government is going to spend for small businesses, the Fiscal Responsibility Council, again, it is important that that actually be reconstituted. And not just reconstituted, but tell the public about it. Who are the members? So that we can make sure that they have complied with the law when it comes to it being reconstituted. So we need to understand, Madam Speaker, what is the status of the Fiscal Responsibility Council. Because as I said, the IMF implies that they were told that this Fiscal Responsibility Council has been reconstituted. So we need to understand, has it actually been reconstituted? And if it has been, who are the members? When was it reconstituted? Have they been given their mandate? When are they going to provide their reports? These are important questions as we move forward. Anytime we spend any government money, the Fiscal Responsibility Council will be relevant because they are the ones who also look at government spending, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as I conclude, Madam Speaker, we recognize the potential benefits and accept the potential benefits and support these bills. We recognize the potential benefits of modernizing the laws governing secured transactions. But they represent only a piece of what needs to occur. It is a piecemeal approach that fails to address the fundamental challenges hindering economic growth and diversification in the Bahamas. So we believe that the government must develop a holistic approach. And this holistic approach must incentivize lending, strengthen and support institutions like the Small Business Development Center created by the FNM government. Speak truth. And Truth to power. Speak truth to power. Come on. promotes targeted investments in industries crucial for our economic future. The Bahamian people, Madam Speaker, deserve a government like the FNM
Absolutely.
that will truly
Without question, no doubt.
be committed to building a prosperous and sustaining or sustainable economy for all. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And as I said, we support these bills.
No doubt, no doubt.
Thank you, Honorable Member Asmini. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Central Grand Bahama.
Rub me off. My speech is always short. Good morning, Madam Deputy and colleagues. And Madam Speaker, see, I wrote my initial speech, Madam Speaker, changed it to Mr. Deputy, now it's back to Madam Speaker. So if I say Madam Deputy or Mr. Deputy, please don't be offended. It's already in my speech. First of all, I would like to really express my appreciation and thanks to Almighty God just for the gift of life, just for another day, in light of what is going on in our country. I secondly want to thank the good people of Central Grand Bahama for sending me here again to represent them. And Madam Speaker, as was stated by the member for East Grand Bahama, this side fully supports, I want to say that from the onset, the compendium of bills in front of us today. Because again, anything that empowers the Bahamian people, this side fully supports. Madam Speaker, I'll beg your indulgence in allowing me to offer some brief condolences, one to Ms. Oroween Jones and family on the passing of her brother, Officer Stephen Jones, who passed away suddenly last week while standing in the bank. To the family of Pastor Emeritus Rufus Cooper from Freetown, who will be funeralized this coming Saturday in East Grand Bahama. I would like to offer condolences to the family of Antoinette Smith, popular Port Lukai vendor who passed away last week, and to Ms. Jetlyn Burrows on the sudden loss of her husband, Gary, who also passed away suddenly on January 16. And also, again, as was stated earlier, to my colleague, the member for St. Anne's, Adrian White, on the passing of his father. On the flip side, Madam Speaker, I would like to congratulate a personal friend and the former director of sports, Mr. Tim Munnings, who went on from becoming a world champion in the Masters 55 to 59 category last year in the 400 meters to last weekend breaking the world record over the same distance, time of 52.02 seconds. So again, Tim is certainly an inspiration to all of us. And so that some of us, even getting now in our golden years, we can still remain fit and be a force on the world stage. So once again, congratulations to Tim on his major achievement. And I also, Madam Speaker, would like to congratulate another friend, Ms. Raquel Riley, who's perhaps the most decorated female golfer the country has ever produced. She's won many collegiate championships while attending Hampton University, where she graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Sports Management. She won a championship on the LPGA Suncoast Tour as a Bahamian. I believe she's the only one. And now she's going to be inducted in the African American Golf Hall of Fame this coming May, on the 24th. So she'll be the second Bahamian to be inducted, following in the footsteps of Mr. Glenn Pratt, who recommended her, and the board openly accepted her. So thanks very much to Mr. Pratt and his efforts at ensuring that Raquel is now going to be inducted into the African American Golf Hall of Fame. And Madam Speaker, you know, with all the accolades that I just spoke to with respect to Raquel Riley, she is, in the Bahamas, a professional golfer, perhaps the most decorated we've ever had, and she's unemployed. Unemployed. And again, it begs the question how serious we are about Bahamianization, because there was a time in this country when every golf course had a Bahamian director. Every pro was a Bahamian. And here it is, we have a man like Fred Popol, who has over 700,000 members as president of the USGA, or Raquel Riley. We have a Chris Lewis in Freeport, qualified, and they are in this country and unemployed. We need to do something about that. Now, I've had a good conversation with the Minister of Immigration, as well as the Minister of Labor, who has agreed to meet with the board of the Professional Golfers Association just to have this discussion to see how we can empower these outstanding Bahamians and ensure that they are employed in the Bahamas. Madam Speaker, with respect to Grand Bahama, of course, we know we have a lot of challenges. And as was stated earlier, issue with the fire trucks. I've heard a member for Fox Hill say that he's had conversation with the fire department and they say they have sufficient apparatus to fight all of the necessary issues with fire in Grand Bahama. And I kind of question that because I've been on the scene. If that's what he said, if he did not say that, then I apologize. But what I thought he said, or what I heard him saying, was that in conversation, they have sufficient to fight, to deal with fire issues. And I've seen them partnering with the airport, with Buckeye Fire truck, again, because had those fire trucks not been available, there would have been some serious problems. And like East Grand Bahama said, Grand Bahama is long. It is long, and West Grand Bahama is one zone. Airman Rock is another zone. The city of Freeport is another zone. East Grand Bahama, one fire truck that we are borrowing cannot service the entire island of Grand Bahama.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for
Making
Fox Hill.
is, yes, you were factually correct about the state of repair of the fire. What I said was I spoke to the officials, and they said that in their opinion, they had whatever was necessary to meet any fire emergency. I didn't say they had the equipment and all the rest of it, and then you answered the question. Yeah, you answered the question. They went and spoke to other agencies, and they had the ability to use the equipment, which would solve any problem. That's all I said.
Right. Thank you, honourable member.
Another point that was raised,
ambulance,
a very relevant point that was raised by East Grand Bahama, is that
I don't think they have a fire truck.
A very relevant point was raised by East Grand Bahama last week. In the event, based on the protocols, ICAO protocols, if you're using the fire truck, the airport fire truck, and there's an issue, because disaster preparedness does not only relate to hurricanes. Disaster preparedness could be a fire issue. It can be a air traffic tragedy. It could be a boating tragedy. So if the one fire truck that is needed at the airport is in McLeanstown fighting the fire on West End, then we are exposed. So we're just speaking to the protocol.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Exum Ragged Island.
Just for the record, the airport authority will never leave a tier 1 airport exposed. So there's always a working fire truck at the airport. So let's not put that on the record.
For that,
Thank you, honourable member.
because of course, we're concerned. So once we understand that the protocol is in place, then that's satisfactory. We get that.
Back and forth is Grand Bahama, Andros, New Providence, Abaco are fire zones every year because of the forests. This is not something that they don't know to deal with every year. And what, as I understand, the fire department makes sure that homes are not in the pathway. That's the first. Most of the times, you just let it burn itself out. Yes, right.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for
Madam
Marcos City.
Speaker, the member for Fox Hill is not a medical doctor. He's not a firefighter. And by the way, we spoke to some, one of whom has just recently been transferred in Grand Bahama. And so we know the anxiety even in that department. Madam Speaker, much of the fire is in East, Marco City, and Central, a lot of it.
Yeah.
I own properties in, for example, in Fortune Hills. The entire area from West Beach Road all the way down to the end where the condominiums are was on fire. Residents have respiratory challenges, not just there, in many areas in Grand Bahama. That's a concern. So when you hear a member of parliament play down the severity of it because of a lack of capacity, whether we in the chair or they in the chair is secondary. The bottom line is no fire department should have vehicles that are not functioning. And so I was concerned by the tone and the information you're providing. You do not live in that zone. So you are not in a position to talk about the discomfort and anxiety that people are facing. I have an opportunity to speak on a regular basis with persons. I myself lived after Hurricane Dorian in that area, so we know what it's like when the smoke is on. And so the dismissive attitude that you demonstrated then and now, again, worries me because you have become all of a sudden the spokesperson on Grand Bahama matters that, in my view, you do not have a grasp of. And so I'm very concerned. We need additional fire trucks on the island. That's the bottom line.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Fox Hill.
On a very narrow point. All this yada, yada, yada he's running on with, I didn't know where that come from. That's yada, yada, yada. I simply answered what the member of parliament was talking about. That's it. Now, he could, be on his soapbox and, try to get himself reelected to Marco City. I hope he fails. Fine. You use it for your opportunity. But all I was answering was a single narrow point. All this other stuff about anxiety, concern, and all the rest of that, you raise that, you deal with it.
Thank you, honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Central.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I do echo the concerns of my colleagues. Madam Speaker, there's some other issues that I'd like to speak to that I will tie into my speech on the bill in front of us. Madam Speaker, one of my concerns, again, I've expressed it in here over and over, is a matter of food security. Madam Speaker, we hear the cry every day in Grand Bahama. Whether you are in charge of a church, member of parliament, any outreach program, people are crying for food. And the very, very vibrant food voucher program that was in place, again, that has been pretty much done away with. And every day we are hearing people crying for food. They want food vouchers, they want food vouchers, they want food vouchers. In fact, I had an experience where a young lady, her children didn't make it to the vouchers. They didn't make it to the Christmas event, and I called her to arrange to drop the toys off. She said, Mr. Lewis, I appreciate that, but please, I'd rather you bring me some groceries. So I stopped off at one of the food stores and I bought her, and it was the tears couldn't stop flowing. How grateful she was just to make sure that she had a meal for that day to take care of her and her children. So again, it is a matter that we should really pay very close attention to, Madam Deputy and colleagues, because it is something that is really something that we really have to deal with, and it's a matter that is prevalent in Grand Bahama. Maybe it's all good in Nassau, but I'm saying Grand Bahama, that is a problem. And Madam Speaker, I'm concerned when I look at a report like this that was in the Guardian yesterday. It said the FAO report, the Bahamas food insecurity among the lowest in region. And it talks about the issues that we have. It's insecurity. It's insecurity, right? That's what it's saying. But then, while it's saying it is the lowest, it still says that we have an issue with the country is though listed as one with some of the highest costs to maintain a healthy diet. The average cost of a healthy diet per person per day was $5.41 in 2022. I know where they get a number from, because one salad costs more than $10, making the Bahamas the 7th most expensive country in the list of 39 countries. And when you turn over on the same article, it says the FAO explains that the Bahamas and other Caribbean countries' supply of food is under threat from climatological events that occur not only in the region, but globally,
because of their over-dependence on imports from countries outside the region. So again, while that interdependency might be low, we have a major issue. And we have been pushing the importance of food security. I've been pushing backyard farming. We need our people to understand how important it is. And a concern that came out of this morning out of one of my group, one of the leading farmers in Grand Bahama said on the circular this morning that he has to increase the cost of his produce because of the cost of living, the cost to produce. It's very expensive to buy feed. It's very expensive to take care of the livestock. So in order for him to now produce the quality and the quantity to service his customers in Grand Bahama, he now must increase his prices by 3%. And again, I understand his concern. So again, we need now to find a way where we have more of our people in the position where we can bring the cost of living, healthy cost of living, down. And again, like I said, Madam Speaker, the administration, this administration, again, you know, we often, it's going to get a little blow. Very often, I've heard this administration jump on Marco City. I've heard that on many occasions about some dead tilapias. I've heard that over and over. Which, I've heard that. But I would ask you, hey, I'll take a drink at that. But no, the flip side, I would ask you a question. What about, while we talk about dead tilapias, what about your much touted Golden Yoke program? That was supposed to be such a big game changer in this country. What about? No, we getting there.
Stay focused, man.
What about Southern Shores brought that matter to this floor, and it was much touted about. It's going to be a game changer. It's going to be a matter of us having some good food security. We can empower the farmers. We can have the broiler houses all over. So again, Madam Speaker, I need some protection over here.
Stay on your point.
Southern Shores brought the matter to this floor.
Yeah, stay on your point.
And we all felt good about it.
You want me to strike that from the record for you?
About what? About the Golden Yoke? The member for Central and South Eleuthero, he's not here today. He's not here today. But he oftentimes talk about bringing sexy back to farming. Bringing sexy back. Well, this has been the longest forecast of bringing sexiness in the history of sexiness. Because today, we still don't see the sexiness that's brought back as a result of the Golden Yoke program. We don't see the broiler houses. We don't see it happening. Now, I want to thank Centerville for continuing on with the program. There's been some grants issued. There's been some movement in that direction. But you know what, Madam Deputy and colleagues, we need to do a little more. It is a move in the right direction, but we need to do more. It is not enough for us to come in here and say how important it is for us to empower our people. And yes, a grant is good. You don't have to pay it back. But let's look at the overall importance of how a larger grant. We talk about SBDC. Talk about making tasks accessible to our farmers and to our fishers. Let us look at this in a more serious manner, because it is serious when our import of foreign food, foreign products is so high. South and Central Andrews, as East, Grandmama said just now, let's make some farmland, some crown land available. Make it more available to our farmers. And let us make the process of getting that farmland, the crown land, easier. It's too tedious, too time consuming.
If the land is available, as was stated earlier, by Cat Island and Rum Key and East Grand Bahama, the farmer can now leverage that to gain capital for real development, which can be game changers. Making grant for fishing vessels and other apparatus more available and easier to access. Colleagues, we have millions of tons of fish and lobsters worth perhaps billions and trillions of dollars just offshore in the Bahamas. Think about it. We have it swimming along the shorelines, under shore itself. Waterkey, yes, Exuma, Acklands, you mean the largest conchs in the world. Trillions of dollars. What if we empower our people and allow them the opportunity to access, to harvest, to catch? You know how much powerful we can be? One of the issues that I have, Madam Speaker and colleagues, is the importation of not food, but unhealthy food. We see oftentimes on these labels for export only. It is not good enough for consumption in the countries where they are produced. But we import them into our country, the poison for our people to eat. It happens. We need to crack down on this practice. And I beg the question, where is the Food, Healthy, and Safety Department in this? Part of the challenge of that department is that they lack the facilities, the lab facilities, to check and to test goods coming into this country. I've been told that, particularly the meat, that is important. There's hardly any way for us to determine the quality of the meat that we are importing. And our people are consuming it. We need more people in the surveillance department to ensure that animal, plants, and stuff that comes into our food industry is more accessible and is more healthy. See, to answer this challenge, Madam Speaker, the labs that we use to test our food is not internally. We use external lab. And I'm hoping that we correct that soon. I'm hearing no, so I'm hoping that the labs are up and running in the country where we can test what our people are consuming locally. See, I am strongly advocating for this, Madam Speaker, that this for export-only food remains outside of our country. And here it is. We're eating this food and we're wondering why we have so many issues of hypertension, diabetes, obesity, kidney and heart diseases. Why every God-given day you see multiple flyers going around, people begging for the gift of life. We need blood. We need blood. Well, it's a part of not only our lifestyle, but it's a part of what we're eating. So colleagues, we are in a position where we know better. Let us do better. Madam Speaker and colleagues, using components of this bill to open these doors to allow our people to gain financial empowerment is critical. We'll allow our citizens to use their immovable properties, such as land, farmhouses, processing plants, and their movable properties, such as their produce, their machinery, boats, etc., to gain access to real capital. We can be more secured as a nation. We need now to ensure, as was stated earlier, that the banks are now incentivized. Because creating the legislation in here, saying that you can now use your car, you can use your land, you can use your house, you can use your movable property as collaterals, and the banks are not incentivized to use them, it's almost like you wasting your time. So we have to find ways to ensure that the bank work with us, that they incentivize to ensure that this move that we're making today in Parliament is worthwhile. So, Madam Speaker, as I said earlier, I will not be long. And once again, I would like to say that we are in full support of this bill. And we know that by allowing our people to use their collateral for real impactful capital will indeed be a game changer, not only for Bahamians, for the Bahamas. And this will be a way that we can one day allow our country to stand alone, not only as a sovereign nation, but as a self-sufficient nation. Central Grand Bahama is in full support of this compendium. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member Asmini. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for South and Central Andros.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable members of this chamber, I stand before you today deeply committed to our shared vision for the future and with great confidence in the potential of this great country, the Bahamas. Today, we consider not just amendments to our laws, but a reimagining of the possibilities of our nation. These bills, though rooted in legal language, are dynamic tools for transformation. They signify progress, resilience, and our shared ambition to emerge as a developed nation, a beacon of hope and opportunity in the region and the world. Madam Speaker, as we consider the ways this group of legislative bills will strengthen our communities, I must highlight the incredible progress we are witnessing across Andros. From Central Andros to Mangrove Key to South Andros, we are seeing transformative initiatives that reflect the power and potential of effective governance. Madam Speaker, the journey to becoming a developed nation is not one of small, hesitant, or non-steps, but rather bold strides. It requires vision, adaptability, and a commitment to creating an environment where all Bahamians, regardless of their circumstances, can thrive. I wish to extend congratulations, as the member for Exumas and Ragged Island did, to the newly elected local government officials across our beautiful islands, and in particular, those chosen to serve the people of Andros. Local government is an essential part of national development, driving progress from the ground up by strengthening communities, enhancing services, and fostering leadership. Madam Speaker, just as strong local governments lays the foundation for natural progress, the legislative measures before us are critical to shaping a future of growth, stability, and opportunity. A country with vision must not only empower its people, but also enact laws that drive innovation. This compendium of bills before this Honorable House represents a clear and intentional step towards the future. I ask that you allow me to address each one by one, connecting their intent and implications to the lives of the people we serve and our collective aspirations. The Transactions in Movable Property Security Interest Bills 2024, Madam Speaker, is the cornerstone of any developed economy, and that is access to its credit. In nations that have achieved economic prosperity, access to financing has been the lifeblood of small businesses, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Yet, here in the Bahamas, too many of our citizens are locked out by this opportunity. Why? Because they lack the traditional forms of collateral that our financial institutions have historically required. This bill addresses that imbalance head-on, Madam Speaker, by allowing individuals and businesses to use movable property, such as vehicles, machinery, inventory, and even intellectual property, as collateral. We are saying to Bahamians, your assets, no matter the form, have value. Consider the single mother in Andros who runs a small fishing business, Madam Speaker. Her boat and equipment are her livelihood. Yet, under the current system, she might struggle to secure a loan to expand her operations. With this bill, she can now leverage those very assets to access financing, hire workers, and grow her business. On a larger scale, this legislation brings us into alignment with global best practices. Countries that have adopted similar frameworks, such as New Zealand and Canada, have witnessed significant boosts in entrepreneurial activity and small business growth. For the Bahamas, this bill is not just about fostering individual success. It is about creating a ripple effect of economic development that reaches every corner of our islands. The Bankruptcy Amendment Bill 2024, Madam Speaker, No journey toward development is without setbacks. Financial difficulties, though challenging, must not be the end road for individuals or businesses. This bill reflects our commitment to a fair and humane approach to insolvency, one that balances the interests of creditors while offering debtors a second chance. Historically, bankruptcy has carried a stigma in our society, often leaving individuals and families marginalized. This bill redefines bankruptcy as a process of resolution and rehabilitation, not punishment. It introduces provisions that streamline the process, reduce bureaucratic hurdles, and provide a framework for repayment plans that are both realistic and respectful. For small businesses, this amendment is crucial. Imagine a family-owned restaurant in Nassau facing financial struggles due to unforeseen circumstances, perhaps a hurricane or a sharp rise in operational costs. Under this new framework, the owners would have a pathway to restructure their debts, protect the employees, and emerge stronger. As a developing nation, we must recognize that fostering resilience is key to achieving developed national status. This legislation ensures that when Bahamians fall, they indeed, Madam Speaker, have the tools to rise again. The Choices in Action Amendment Bill 2024 is an important step towards modernizing our legal framework to address the realities of intangible assets in the 21st century. In legal terms, Choices in Action refer to intangible personal property rights, rights that cannot be physically possessed but must be claimed or enforced through legal action. These include debts owed, intellectual property rights, shares in a company, insurance policies, and contractual entitlements, to name a few. This amendment recognizes the growing importance of these intangible assets in our global and local economies. For instance, a Bahamian entrepreneur who holds the rights to a patent or a copyright must be able to secure, transfer, or use that right effectively, whether as a collateral for a loan or as an asset to enhance their business. By refining the legal framework governing Choices in Action, we make it easier to protect these rights, enforce them, and ultimately unlock their true value. Consider the artist who licenses their work to an international gallery, or the software developer who sells the code to a global company. This legislation ensures that their rights are clear, enforceable, and respected. Madam Speaker, the significance of this amendment extends beyond the legal profession. It affects every Bahamian who engages in business, creates intellectual property, or participates in contractual agreements. As we strive for greater capacity in technology and business, we must ensure our legal system supports innovation, entrepreneurship, and the efficient use of all assets, tangible and intangible alike. This bill is about enabling our citizens and businesses to harness the full potential of their rights, ensuring that no resource, physical or intangible, goes underutilized in our pursuit of economic and social advancement. It underscores our commitment to creating an environment where individuals and businesses can thrive in a globalized, knowledge-based economy. Through this legislation, we reaffirm our dedication to a legal system that is not only just, but also forward-looking and adaptable to the changing needs of our people. The Companies Amendment Bill 2024, Madam Speaker, corporate governance is the backbone of any developed economy. Investors, both local and international, must have confidence that our business environment is fair, transparent, and well-regulated. This amendment strengthens the Companies Act, enhancing transparency and ensuring that businesses in the Bahamas adhere to the highest standards. For our citizens, this translates into economic stability and also job creation. When businesses operate transparently and responsibly, they attract investment, which in turn drives growth. This bill is not just about compliance. It is about fostering an environment where businesses can thrive while contributing meaningfully to society. Madam Speaker, as we seek to diversify our economy, this legislation will play a crucial role in attracting industries beyond tourism and finance. It is a foundation upon which we can build a more inclusive and sustainable economy. The Cooperative Societies Amendment Bill 2024. Madam Speaker, cooperatives have long been a pillar of economic empowerment in the Bahamas. From credit unions to agriculture cooperatives, they embody the spirit of community and collective action. This amendment strengthens the regulatory framework for cooperatives, ensuring their sustainability and expanding their reach. For the average Bahamian, this means greater access to affordable loans, investment opportunities, and community-driven initiatives. As a developing nation, we cannot underestimate the power of collective action. This bill ensures that cooperatives remain a vital tool for economic resilience and community development. The International Business Companies Amendment Bill 2024, Madam Speaker, as a global financial center, the Bahamas must continuously adapt to remain competitive. This amendment ensures that our International Business Companies Act meets international standards, fostering trust and attracting global investors. For Bahamians, this means more jobs in financial services, increased foreign investment, and a stronger economy. It reaffirms our position as a leader in the international financial sector, even as we strive to diversify and expand. The Money Lending Amendment Bill 2024, Madam Speaker, access to credit is a cornerstone of financial empowerment, but it must be balanced with protections that safeguard the interests of borrowers. The Money Lending Amendment Bill 2024 is a vital step towards achieving that balance. This amendment seeks to address the growing concern of predatory lending practices that have often left our most vulnerable citizens trapped in cycles of debt. By establishing stricter regulations and oversight, this bill ensures that all borrowers are treated fairly, transparently, and with dignity. For our citizens, this bill represents a critical shield against exploitation. It sets clear and enforceable standards that prevent lenders from imposing excessive fees, hidden charges, and exorbitant interest rates. At its core, this legislation is about fairness, ensuring that lending practices are not only responsible, but they are also promote financial literacy and accountability. Moreover, Madam Speaker, this amendment encourages responsible lending practices, which will ultimately foster greater trust in our financial institutions. When individuals have confidence that they are borrowing on fair terms, they are more likely to engage with our financial system in ways that stimulate economic growth and stability. In turn, this creates a more inclusive financial environment where people from all walks of life can access the credit they need to improve their livelihoods, whether to start a business, buy a home, or manage personal expenses. The reforms introduced in this bill also align with global best practices, ensuring that our lending regulations are in step with international standards. This is essential not only for protecting our citizens, but also for ensuring that our financial sector remains competitive, robust, and attractive to investors. By fostering a culture of ethical lending and responsible borrowing, this bill will contribute to the long-term health of our economy. It is a key component of any developed nation's financial ecosystem, one where fairness and transparency are paramount, and where the financial well-being of every citizen is safeguarded. The Sale of Goods Amendment Bill 2024, Madam Speaker, commerce is undeniably the lifeblood of our economy. The way we engage in trade, exchange goods, and resolve disputes directly impacts the prosperity and trust within our marketplace. This amendment bill is a pivotal piece of legislation that seeks to modernize and strengthen the framework governing sales transactions in the Bahamas. With an evolving global marketplace, it is essential that our laws keep pace with the international standards, ensuring fairness, transparency, and protection for both buyers and sellers. For the average Bahamian, this amendment represents a significant improvement in their consumer experience. It introduces clear and consistent regulations that guarantee fair terms in every transaction, protecting the rights of consumers while also ensuring that businesses operate on a level playing field. By addressing key aspects such as warranties, returns, and the quality of goods, this bill fosters a safer environment for commerce where both parties can enter transactions with greater confidence. Equally important, Madam Speaker, this bill provides a clear pathway for resolving disputes that may arise during the course of sales. In the past, gaps in the law may have left consumers and businesses uncertain of their rights of the process for addressing grievances. This amendment rectifies that by offering better mechanisms for dispute resolution, ensuring that both parties have access to fair and effective remedies. By aligning our laws with international trade practices, we also open up doors to greater economic opportunities. Our commitment to modernizing these regulations send a strong signal to global investors and trade partners that the Bahamas is serious about fostering a reliable, transparent, and efficient marketplace. As we position ourselves, Madam Speaker, to take advantage of new opportunities in global trade and commerce, it is essential that we have legal framework that supports and enhances these efforts. This bill is not just about improving the buying and selling experience for individuals, though that is certainly a key benefit. It is about creating a foundation for stronger, sustainable economic growth. When businesses have confidence in the legal protections governing their transactions, they are more likely to expand and innovate. When consumers know their rights are protected, they are more likely to engage in the marketplace, stimulating demand and further driving our economy forward. This amendment is a necessary step in modernizing our legal framework and positioning the Bahamas as a leader in commerce and trade. The Stamp Bill 2024 amendment, Madam Speaker, finally we come to the Stamp Bill. This legislation represents a significant step forward in simplifying the stamp duty process, making it more efficient and accessible for all Bahamians. The primary objective of this amendment is to reduce the cost and administrative burdens that have long been associated with the payment of stamp duty, particularly in transactions related to property, business registration, and other essential exchanges. For the average Bahamian, Madam Speaker, this bill translates into a smoother, more affordable experience when engaging in everyday transactions. Whether purchasing a home, starting a business, or conducting any other type of transaction that requires stamp duty, this amendment will make the process easier and more straightforward. By streamlining the procedures and reducing unnecessary fees, we are not only easing the financial burden on our citizens, but also improving the overall efficiency of our system. This change will also have a significant positive impact on the broader economy. Simplifying the stamp duty process makes it easier for individuals to enter the property market, empowering more Bahamians to achieve home ownership. It will also reduce the red tape faced by entrepreneurs and businesses when starting or expanding their operations, making the Bahamas a more attractive place to do business. In turn, this will foster greater economic activity, create jobs, and promote long-term growth. Madam Speaker, moreover, this amendment aligns with the government's broader efforts to modernize and streamline our legal and financial systems. By reducing complexity and ensuring that the process is transparent and equitable, we are building a stronger foundation for a prosperous future where Bahamians can access opportunities with less hassle at a lower cost. While this may seem like a small change, Madam Speaker, it is one that will have a meaningful and lasting impact on the lives of ordinary Bahamians. It is a significant step toward making the Bahamas a more efficient, accessible, and attractive place to live, work, and invest. Madam Speaker, these amendments and bills represent our collective commitment to a brighter, more prosperous future. As the member for East Grand Bahama said, a piecemeal approach. However, you have to start the approach, Madam Speaker, and not sit there and do nothing. They reflect our values, our vision, and our determination to create a Bahamas that stands proudly among the world's developed nations. I urge this honorable chamber to support these transformative measures. Together, let us lay the foundation for a Bahamas that is not just surviving, but thriving. On behalf of the great residents in Mangrove Key, Central, and South Andros, I support these bills, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member Asmini. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Kalani.
Madam Speaker, it's about 1:45, and I have a lot to say. And I would appreciate if rather than me starting now, then taking a break to come back, if we can suspend until 3 o'clock, and I would be more than happy to commence.
I will have to concur. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Freetown.
You want to go? I'm told, Madam Speaker, that Fort Charlotte has a contribution that might be 10 minutes. I was hoping that Kalani would condense what he had to say into 15 minutes. Or at least break it up so we could have a break in between all the tedium.
Okay.
It says go 10 minutes.
Okay.
I'm buying lunch for everybody.
I agree with that, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Fort Charlotte.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I wish to make a very brief contribution because the bill before us, the Transaction in Movable Property Security Interests 2024, and the consequential amendments to the various other bill, piecemeal. Madam Speaker, every piece of legislation has to be seen, analyzed within the context of our history. We live, Madam Speaker, in a country where the private land was in primarily the hands of the minority,
Yes.
a privileged minority, and the millions of acres of land which was not private, and that was in the hands of the state, was also an extension of the power use of the minority. And Madam Speaker, the few persons from the majority who own land, up until recently, very recent, who owned land, that land was not secured because many of our ancestors farming the land of the Bahamas, of the Bahama Islands, for generations and generations had no paper. And though putting generations of labor in the land, slash and burn, moving from one area to the next, and cultivating the land of these islands. You know, Madam Speaker, the practice of using the Quieting Act of the Bahamas, primarily by the minority against the majority, those few who own land. And there's a very interesting case that I want to quote from the highest court of our land. It quotes Mr. Paul Adderley, and this is a case out of Cat Island, talking about the use. And it says, and this is paragraph 8, and this is a well-known case, his Lord Walker of the Privy Council, and this is the case of Umbrista versus Lightbourne. And in paragraph 7, am I up to 5 minutes? It quotes Paul Adderley, and it says, Mr. Adderley, who was a lecturer familiar with the 1959 Act, both as a legislator, he was a legislator here, distinguished Attorney General and Minister of Foreign Affairs, that the bench and bar must be vigilant to prevent the statutory procedure being abused by land thieves, often stealing the land from the minority who, operating informally within the society, farming, possessing, had all of the indicia of possession, but had the land taken from under them, Madam Speaker. And then the Privy Council said it is no accident that the Judicial Committee has over the years heard many appeals raising questions of title to land in the Bahamas. And then it goes on to quote the various cases. Madam Speaker, not only did we not own the land, and not only did the few of us who did own the land had it often taken from under us through this device, which was very informal, only advertised mostly in Nassau, and people in the Family Islands who for over 100 years been in possession of the land. And then, Madam Speaker, we have fishing people who every season have to go and borrow informally from family members and friends in order to buy fuel, in order to buy supplies, in order to sometimes even buy a little bigger boat. They get no land, oftentimes, but they have to borrow informally because these banks, many of whom are foreign-owned, who repatriate out of this country, most of whom, thank you, Central Grandbam, most of whom, foreign-owned, have liquidity, and that liquidity would sit here, and they would repatriate their profits. And the people in the fishing industry, unless you have land, cannot get the necessary funding. And then, Madam Speaker, our farmers, we talk about food insecurity. The people who are cultivating the land so that we can get good food, organic and healthy food, they cannot get the funding because the issue of land. In other words, Madam Speaker, I make the simple point that today, even though you call it piecemeal, is a radical transformation in the historic movement to giving the majority of the people in this country, whether you're in agriculture, whether you are in fishing, and also what about the young people who are inventing? You know, Madam Speaker, because we listen to so much foreign imported entertainment, we don't understand that a singer, whether you talk about my friend Stevie S. in Bimini, or Ronnie, the late Ronnie Butler, we don't understand that every song that they create is an innovation. How could we as a people, when the artist is telling our story and holding up the mirror before us, we don't see it as an innovation? We don't see it, Madam Speaker. So now an artist with an idea for an album can now go after acquired property and get funding. And you know, Madam Speaker, they talk about incentivizing the bank. We have to incentivize Bahamians, just like they do in Jamaica. You have people who work in the bank. Some of them work in the bank here. They went back to Jamaica and they form investment companies. And some of those investment companies are now lending to Bahamian contractors $200 million to do PPPs. You know, Madam Speaker, this banking construct that we have was not ordained in heaven. It is a construct. What we must do is incentivize all these talented persons with banking experience, incentivize them to set up merchant banks. Because the concept of merchant banking only exists for the historically privileged who have the accumulated wealth and the historic relationship. But we need, Madam Speaker, and what this bill is doing is putting us on the trajectory so that more of our people can use their intellectual and creative imagination, who want to create a play, a song, or to create an app, can go and the lender can assess the person. What about people who generations doing fishing, and every year they bring in catch that is exported as lobster tail to Europe and to the United States? You may tell me they have to have 4, 5, 20, 100 acres somewhere in order to gain access to capital? Clearly, Madam Speaker, I am speaking today for the majority without apology, and that we must liberate the whole concept of credit and the availability of credit to the majority of our people so that we can innovate, we can produce, we can manufacture. And to me, Madam Speaker, on behalf of Fort Charlotte, that is the significance of this debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member Asmini. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Kalani.
Madam Speaker, I stand to reserve my spot for 3 p.m.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Freetown.
I move that the business of the House be suspended through 3 p.m.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Honorable Members. It has been moved and seconded that the business of this House be suspended until 3 p.m. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is carried. The business of this House stands suspended until 3 p.m.
All rise.